Hey guys, still working on a control panel top here. I think what we're going to do next is probably come and drill our hole out for our trackball. This is going to be drilled out somewhere in this area right here. And I've got this hole saw that I bought a good while back from Ace, and that was to do some plumbing. I had to run some PVC drainage pipe. And just so happens, I think this is about a 3.5 inch hole saw. It's very big. Don't ever want to try to use a hole saw this big with a little cordless drill. It'll probably damage the drill unless you just got a monster, nice, powerful DeWalt or Makita, something with a lot of high output and you know, a good bit of strength and beefiness to it, a lot of torque. I'm going to use the big monster there because it's really needed for large hole saws like this. Even a small hole saw creates so much friction when it's drilling. Even holes like these 1 1/8 inch holes, it just creates a lot of friction because the bit all the way around the teeth is it's creating friction between the wood at every tooth as it's drilling through the wood. So it really puts a lot of pressure on your drill. So it's best to have a big heavy duty drill, something like this one right here, this Firestorm drill that I've got, and it'll power through this with no problem. You got to be careful too, don't want to split or splinter your wood up much, so it's a good idea if you can to go halfway or maybe a little more through the wood and then flip the wood over and go the rest of the way. But I was lucky enough to have this. I didn't have to go out and buy it because I think this was pretty expensive. I can't remember. Seemed like it was somewhere around 15 to 20 bucks, something like that. I can't remember, but it's the Ace brand. It wasn't a real nice name brand, but this is real heavy duty. And can't remember if I had to buy the bit in the center there separate, the centering bit. Can't remember if they call that a hole saw mandrel or what they call it, but you got a little set screw in there to tighten it in there, and the bit is the center point. That's right where you're going to center up your hole and start driving, so that's what you want to be on the dead center of where you want your hole. Show you a couple other things too. There's our trackball, and this is about the right size. This little trim piece that goes on over here is an optional piece you can buy with these. You don't have to use them, but it kind of goes around the top when you pop this through your hole, and it gives you a nice little trim piece on there and just kind of makes it look cool when you've got it in your control panel. But I sit there and lined it up with this and just made sure that around the edge of this trim, the hole that was drilled with this was not going to be larger than the edge of the trim, or this piece would just kind of sink down into the hole, which this is almost exactly 3/4 of an inch. If it sticks up above my control panel any, it won't be no more than a 1/16 of an inch, I don't think. But I think it's going to be about flush. You just don't want this, you know, sliding all the way down into your hole that goes over this. And this hole saw, I turned the bit upside down and lined this up over it, and luckily that trim piece is a little bit wider in diameter than the hole saw. So it's going to cut out a hole that's really just perfect enough for this trim piece to sit down into without the edge of it falling down into the hole. But when you buy this trackball from Ultimark, that's an optional piece that you can get with it, I believe. It cost a few dollars, I think. But that's one thing we're doing, and got a couple of pieces of metal from the local Lowe's recently. What it was is this is a 3/4 inch piece of metal. It's aluminum. It's 1/16 inch thickness. Let me get to the label end here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But if you ever need anything like this, they have multiple thicknesses and widths and all you can get. There's an aluminum section that's not very far from where the screws and nuts and bolts and stuff are on an aisle at my local Lowe's. And this is a 1/16 inch thick by 3/4 inch wide by 3 foot long piece. And it's aluminum by Steelworks. I think this was about a $4.50 piece of aluminum. It's a nice looking piece of aluminum, only has 16 inch thickness to it. And what I was wanting to use it for really was, if you remember on the edge of our control panel top here, I've got it beveled to receive the angle where it leans up down below where the monitor bezel and everything will be on the control panel. And I wanted a piece to just kind of trim this up right here to reinforce the edge, because even after we get a top on it, artwork and plexi or whatever, there may be a possibility that some of this has a little weakness there because you're not coming to a 90-degree angle. It's less than 90 degrees there, and it makes this prone to chipping a little bit if you're opening and closing it. I figured if I put this along the edge of it there, that it would reinforce it and make it stronger. Now I'm going to have to cut it to length, but at the angle I've got, even though this is just slightly less than 3/4 inch, when you cut it on an angle, it makes it almost exactly 3/4 of an inch with the angle I've got. I can't remember if that's around a, I don't know, a 70-degree angle or something like that. But it comes out almost exactly dead on 3/4 of an inch. If you can see there, there's the edge of it, and it lines up almost dead perfect. So once we cut this to length, we just have to attach it to the wood. And I haven't made my mind up whether I'm going to use screws or what. I got a feeling I'm going to have to just use some adhesive on the side of the wood and this side of the aluminum, because it's so thin, it's only 1/16 of an inch thin, that I won't be able to make any kind of recess holes in this aluminum. There's a special bit you can get that will make like a tapered hole that could hide the head of a screw that could just kind of go down in there flush with this, but I don't have one handy. And also, when you run the screws in, if you're running in from the edge of the plywood there, it could break loose pretty easy from the edge of this plywood. Now, if you went in from the face of the plywood, it'd be pretty strong. But going in from the side, where the grain of it is, those screws are going to have a tendency to try to come out a little easier. So I think just some good adhesive on here, maybe the same stuff we actually use for the laminate, just a coating of it across here and across this aluminum. We might have to scuff the aluminum up with some sandpaper. I believe it'd adhere to there and stay really pretty good. And then around the rest of the control panel top will be the blue T-molding. And I also haven't decided, I may actually come right here and cut a 90-degree on these front corners that are closest to the cabinet, just for a couple of inches. If you can see, let's see, where's my marks at? Have them up here on top. Right there, those two little marks, there's one there and one there. That's where it's going to meet the side of the cabinet. And if from here up to here, I actually cut this at a 90-degree, so it's just like this corner, then I can actually wrap the blue T-molding all the way around the top until you get to that point right there. But the way it's on this angle here, if you go to try to wrap the T-molding is going to go to wrap the corner, and it's just going to stick off up here on the front because of this angle. It's going to be kind of funny. Now, you could cut it on that same angle and then put a little tiny piece, you know, about 3 inches or something there, but that would have a tendency to try to come loose if you didn't glue it or something, and then you'd have a cut piece right here at the edge, and that wouldn't be too great. But that's probably what we're going to use that for. And I may go back and buy another piece of this too. This is long enough to do the piece on the control panel and have just a few inches left over, but I may go buy another piece of this too, because what we still have to do is put a couple pieces of metal for the kind of the retention bracket or retention mechanism for the Marquee. We need a piece on this control panel, or this speaker panel, excuse me. This is a speaker panel that we fabricated, and it's going to get mounted in the cabinet. Well, we need a piece right here on this angle to hold the bottom of the Marquee, and we need a piece on the top of the cabinet, much like what you see right there. These have plastic, I think those are plastic, some people say made out of PVC, that holds the top of your glass or your plexi and your Marquee in. And on the bottom, like this one's built into the that metal that has little perforations in it for the speakers down here. And see how it comes up? It comes up, it's actually not a 90-degree angle. It comes up and it's not 90 degrees there. And I couldn't find anything to act as, you know, a bracket or a retainer or anything for the Marquee at Lowe's. I looked and I couldn't find anything that wasn't a 90-degree angle. So what I did buy was this other piece of aluminum here. This is 4 foot long. I'll turn it around and get to these sticker parts so you can see, in case you ever need to buy any of this. It came from the exact same area as the other piece. It's by Steelworks. If I can get this to focus on the words. Okay, there we go. It's a 90-degree angle, 1/16 inch by 1/2 inch by 3/4 of an inch by 4 feet. So it's 1/16 inch thickness, and then on the end you got a 1/2 inch right here, and it goes up 3/4 of an inch right here. So this part is the same as the other piece of metal I showed you, 3/4 of an inch. This is 1/2 inch. 1/16 inch thickness, and then the length is 4 feet. Well, I originally bought it because I said, well, length of 4 feet, if I cut it with a blade that's not too thick, I'll get almost 2 24-inch pieces out of it. It'd be just slightly less than that because the thickness of your blade will cut a little bit of the aluminum out. But you could always do it with a very thin hacksaw blade and it won't take much out. If you do it on a table saw or anything, which, you know, is a possibility, it could dull a blade, but it'll probably still go through aluminum. It's not a very hard metal. that blade is probably 3 times as thick as a hacksaw blade, so it'll take a good bit of your length off of this piece when you do that. But I was going to use this for both the top and the bottom retainers for the Marquee, and then I got to looking and I said, well, I don't know if that'll work or not, because see how this is here? What I was going to do is line a piece up across there like that. Don't know if I can get this where you can see it or not, but see, the piece of metal is at a 90 degree, and the edge there is not at 90 degrees, so it's not going to work. The Marquee is going to come flat with this once this is mounted in the cabinet, and this piece of metal having a 90 degree angle on it, it's going to come out a little bit right here and then come up, and it's not going to leave the proper reveal to hold a piece of plexi and the Marquee in. So I kept thinking and thinking, I said, well, how can I do this? Because I know this will work perfect on top of the cabinet. Let me flip the speaker panel over and show you what I'm talking about. This is the same as going in there and showing you the cabinet. So imagine this is the top of your cabinet, and let's see. This is the top of the arcade cabinet, and you've got a good 90 degree cut there. And let's say your plexi and your Marquee is going to go in right here. This piece of metal right here is perfect for something like that. You can put it in place, and if you see there, you can pull the metal out a little bit to leave enough of a reveal where you can fit plexi behind there and some artwork, and that little 1/2 inch edge will hold the plexi and the artwork in, and you can mount some screws through the piece of aluminum and hold it in. Well, it works fine on top. Since the other side of this speaker panel is what's going to be at the bottom, and it has that angle on there, it's just not going to work right. So I got to thinking about it, and I said, well, if I used another piece of this metal, this is the flat stuff we're going to use to reinforce the edge on the control panel top, you could actually mount it across the bottom there. At first you'd think, see there, at first you'd think, oh, well, how would that hold the Marquee and everything in? You know, because there's no lip on the edge, there's no angle on the edge. Well, to be honest, it really doesn't have to be. If you leave it sticking off, let's say, probably 1/4 of an inch or so, it's going to be enough to take the thickness of the plexi and the artwork, and there's no way it can come out of there because it's wanting to pull straight out like that. And this is already on an angle, so it's not going to allow it. As long as the top is holding it in, if you got the top 90 degree piece and it's holding it in, and you got this bottom piece here and it's up at an angle, that plexi, there's no way it can come out unless you stuck a screwdriver in or tried to pry it out or something like that. So even just a flat piece of aluminum down here that has the correct width sticking off so that it hides the edge of the plexi and the artwork, it's going to hold it in on the bottom. So it just really needs to be flat down there, as long as the upper part has a lip or an edge on it, like that 90 degree piece there. So I may just go back and buy another piece of this and use it for that. But for right now, this piece is for the edge of the control panel top. So, and what we also did while we was out is get some screws for the aluminum hinge there. That is a piece of aluminum with white powder coating on it. That was the closest offset hinge that I could find on eBay that would work for this. It's a very heavy hinge as far as big. It's not heavy weight wise, but it's heavy duty, and it's supposed to be used for little hatches and stuff on boats and stuff, where you've got live wells and different stuff like that. The guy was selling these in different lengths, and he told me he had this one in a slightly longer length than what I needed. He said he'd cut it for me, so he did cut it. Probably did it on some type of a chop saw, and so it left a little bit of a naked aluminum edge there, but I'm not worried about that at all. He had to cut both ends, because if he cut just one end, the screw holes weren't going to be even. I wanted an even distance between the right screw and the left screw on this. So if you see there's about 3/4 of an inch on the left and the right side, and if you count all the way across, we got 5 screws that will go in and hold this in, and this will mount to the control panel box and to the top of the control panel. And you know, I wasn't real fond of it being white, but then once I got to looking at it, I kind of like it, you know. And it's not really going to be seen unless you open the control panel. This is going to be under the edge of the control panel top. You won't really see it because the control panel top hangs over an inch or so, and there won't be much of this visible. But we'll mount this inside the front of the control panel there. And let's see if I can figure out how this goes. This is actually going to be like this. And this hinge part right there normally would be down when the control panel is closed. And when you open it up, it'll rotate open to let the control panel open. Well, you see it does have some overhang there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another thickness of wood behind this, like that. And I think maybe one more piece of wood, the same 3/4 inch type or 22/32, whatever it is, just sistered on the inside of the box there, will give us the proper thickness. And when we mount and bolt the hinge to that, then the edge of the hinge will be right there on the lip of the control panel. And we're going to have to cut a little recess in the front of this so that the hinge part of this is actually going to be level with the outside of the control panel box, because I don't want it sticking up above there. So we're going to cut, maybe about 3/8 of a little notch down into here, so that when we mount this, it's recessed down into the box there. And the screws I bought, I already have bolts that will go all the way through the front of the control panel box, and we'll put little lock washers and taps on this side on the inside of the box, and you'll just see the heads of the screws or the bolts on the outside, and we'll probably recess them slightly by drilling a slightly larger hole, so the head of the screw or the bolt will go down into the control panel, and we can put artwork or laminate over the top of it. And then these upper holes here will be fastened to the control panel top with these screws here. It took a little bit of looking. These are stainless steel. I looked for white or black, couldn't find it, but I found stainless steel panhead screws, and they're 5/8 inch in length. And let's see, I was trying to remember what the diameter of the screw was. Anyway, I took a drill bit, and I found out what would fall down into the holes on the hinge without actually, you know, having to be forced to fit just loosely into the holes on the hinge. And I took that little template with me, and I took one of these out of the package and dropped it down in there and made sure I had the right, I think it was, shoot, I can't remember, 11/62 or something like that. But we just didn't want the screws to have to be like driven through the holes on the hinge. We want them to just drop through there and barely have any play. And we wanted the correct thickness so that screw will be just long enough to go into this wood along with the thickness of the hinge and not pierce through the opposite side. Because once this is attached, those screws, they'll be coming in from the underside of this part of the panel, and the point of them will be sticking up. We didn't want it poking through this other side. So got 2 boxes of those, and one of them will be used to attach the hinge. We only need 5 of them. What's kind of funny, they're sold in packages of 9. Very odd, but I bought 2 boxes of 9. We'll use 5 of them to attach the hinge, and then we'll have another box of 9 and 4 left over. We'll have about 13 of them, and those will be used to attach the Marquee retainers, those pieces of aluminum there that hold the Marquee in. But anyway, going to get to drilling the hole now. It's been like 18 minutes I've been jabbering, so we'll do that and we'll come back in just a little bit. Okay, we got us a center point for our large hole, 3.5 inch hole that we're doing for our trackball, and that's the center point there. We measured over 2 7/8 inch from this mark here on either side, and 2 7/8 inch from here and up here, so we're dead center, because the box itself, these are kind of based on a square. It doesn't look like it, but from here you're basically dealing with like a square footprint for the trackball. From here straight down is about I think it's 5 3/4 inches, and from left to right it's 5 3/4 inches. So half of that's 2 7/8, and that's the dead center point of your trackball here. So we just measured over on each one. Got us a line there. Hard for you to see there, but it's 2 7/8. It's almost 3, but it's 2 7/8 and 2 7/8. Oh, it's hard for you to see. It looks like it's dead on 3, but the large line after the 3 is the 3 inch mark. But we're centered up good on that, and we're going to go ahead and drill our hole. But the first thing I am going to do, just to make positive sure that we're going to have a good fit before we do anything to our actual control panel, is I'm going to take a scrap piece of plywood or pine or something I got, and I'm going to drill a hole in it with the hole saw and just see how this fits in there, and just make sure that it's not too big a hole. We don't want this trim piece right here. Well, took the trim piece off. Trim piece right here, we don't want that trim piece to fall down in the hole. And you do have to watch for the holes being a little bigger, because whenever you do drill that hole out, even though it looks like it's going to be 3.5 inches, it's going to wallow it out a little bit, because when those hole saws spin, they actually have a slight wobble to it, and as they do like that, they'll cut a hole that's just slightly bigger than what the cup size is of the hole saw. So if it measures 3.5 inch, you might get an 1/8 of an inch over that. You just want to make sure it's not too big for this. So we're going to drill us a test hole first, and just do a little practice insert of the trackball. Just make sure that it looks pretty good. Okay guys, I went out and done a test hole, and this was the same template that I was using when I was flipping it out and back, and using this to help guide the spade bit for our buttonholes on the control panel. I just had enough room on it. I said, well, I'll just do us a test hole on here to see how big a hole was actually made with that large hole saw. And it actually came out a little larger than what I thought, but it's still going to work fine. If you notice there's the hole, and that's what the trackball will be inserted up through. And here's a little trim or the little grommet that goes for it. And if you set it down in the hole, it covers up the edge of the hole just fine. It's got a little bit of play there out and back, but there's enough of a thickness to the edges of it that it never comes to the side enough to where it will reveal the edge of the hole or anything. And that leaves us a little play when we go to mount the trackball. If we're off 1/8 of an inch left or right or up or down, we can kind of move the trackball a little bit inside the hole and then mount it permanently with the 4 screws and those special little inserts that it came with. So looks really good. Like I say, that this little trim piece, it has just a little bit of movement in there. You can see from the underside. Let's see if we can hold this. From the underside there's just a little bit of play there, and it never really reveals anything outside the hole. So it would have been an even tighter fit if the hole saw doesn't wobble as it rotates, but it does, and that just makes a little larger hole. But I measured it, and it's almost exactly a 3.5 inch hole. So this trackball is probably more like, the width across there is probably more like a 3.25 inch. It's been so long since I ordered it, I can't remember by heart. But if you take a look here, looking at the diameter, that's pretty much 3.5 inches across the diameter of this hole. But it's going to work out fine. A little more play than what I thought it would have. Not really going to hurt anything, because when this trackball is mounted in place, there's 4 mounting points. You see those holes there. We got a hole there, there's one right there, and one right there. And there's these long bolts that come up from the bottom of the trackball, and they insert into the wood of the control panel, because you've got to drill some pilot holes into the control panel, and there's these little bushings or inserts that go up in there, and they have threads on the inside of them, and you tap them in, and once you run the bolts up in there, I think it expands those inserts slightly, and they get a really good bite on the wood, and as you tighten it in there more, it just expands a little bit more, and it just really bites onto that wood, and it holds this from the underside without any heads or anything being exposed from the top of the control panel. That's what makes these such great little trackballs. But we're gonna drill the real hole now, and might show you that out on the porch. Might go out and do this in the real control panel. Okay, we have the control panel in place. We have a 2x4 on the left and right side to support the control panel, and we have a 2x4 in the center to receive the pilot bit of the hole saw, and it gives us a little extra backing to press down on, and I can put a knee or a foot on the control panel to kind of support it a little bit and keep it from moving around, because it is a powerful drill and it could possibly spin the entire control panel, but should stay pretty stationary. Ideally you would want to clamp this to a table or something, but I'm just making do with what I've got right now, and it is easier to put a large piece on the floor wherever you're at to drill down with a large hole saw and a powerful drill like this than it is to do it at waist height. You're much more liable to hurt your wrist if you have it up at waist height. You don't have as much control, but with a handle on the side of a drill like the one that I've got over there, you can accidentally lose grip, and that handle can hit you in the shin or the foot or something if you've got your foot supporting the panel like I'm going to have. So just have to be a little careful and keep a really firm grip on your drill. Right here we have took a punch and made a small indentation so that the pilot bit can have a place to start without being too much to the left or right. So we should be able to set the pilot bit right in there and just start drilling the hole. And we'll stop about halfway through, finish the hole from the other side. Might go just a little farther than that. I'm just going to make that indentation a little bit larger. Kind of hard to find a center point. Okay, it looks like we're dead on it. See right there how powerful the drill is. Okay, we broke all the way through with the pilot bit, so we just have to start from the back side and finish the hole. I think I'll move my position. Okay guys, when we drilled our hole, it kind of splintered a little bit whenever we popped through on the opposite side. Don't know if you can see this. Let's see if I can get this in frame here. I've got some splintering right around here. Had a little bit more right here, but I cleaned it up. I've got a little half round file. And to be honest, I think this may be made for metal, but it works just fine for wood. It's just an old file that I brought home from work that I was going to throw out. It's got kind of a rounded edge on it. See if you guys can see that. And you can use a file that's flat too. Just be real careful you don't want to gouge your wood up much. But I'm just taking it and just kind of working it around these areas. And just working it inwards towards the inside of the hole. And you can use a little sandpaper or something, but it'd be a lot easier with a file. Sandpaper, it might actually, splinters could come through the sandpaper and cut your hand or something. But I don't see why you couldn't take like a large wooden dowel and wrap some sandpaper around it and kind of work it around and get some. Well, excuse me, that's the air compressor. Sorry about the air compressor, but anyway, just work around it slowly. Don't enlarge the hole any. Just try to knock the splinters off. And since the trackball is going to mount on the underside, it's going to cover all this up. You'll never see it again. But the top side, it actually turned out pretty good. Didn't really have any splintering or anything on that. I had just a place or two here I just barely bumped, and you just want to do that just to keep your hands from getting any splinters in it.